All right. Can everybody hear us? Congressman Tim Ryan's going to start. I'll just give it to him.
Hey, thank you. So as we continue to watch what's happened in Italy and across the world with combating and trying to respond to the coronavirus, one of the things has become abundantly clear is that we need to start taking immediate action around producing the equipment that our frontline healthcare workers need. The Trump administration has said that they think the process of producing the medical supplies and the equipment needs to happen, but there's been no real meaningful action. And so what we are announcing today is legislation in the House of Representatives that is identical to Senate legislation by Senator Chris Murphy that will compel the president to radically increase production of some of these materials around the Defense Production Act. That is an act that will allow the President of the United States to take over facilities, to buy product, to invest money into converting facilities over. And one of the highest number of calls that we get to our office over the past few weeks has been frontline healthcare workers who do not have the appropriate equipment. And if they do have it now, they're scared to death that they're not going to have it in a week or two when we get the surge from the coronavirus. And so what this bill does is it compels the president to identify private sector capacity to produce nothing less than 500 million N95 respirator masks, 200,000 ventilators, 20 million face shields, 500 million pairs of gloves, 20 million surgical gowns, and any other medical material deemed necessary. Back in 1939, President Roosevelt said that we needed to make 50,000 planes. That was 10 times the amount of planes that we had, and we surpassed that production. And so if we could do that back in 1939 and 1940, we certainly could make sure that the masks and the gloves and the gowns and the ventilators and the medical equipment that we are going to need in the next few weeks and months can be produced here in the United States. And so this requires the administration to direct the distribution of these supplies, which puts a stop to the competition between states. One of the scariest things I've heard in the last few weeks is to hear the governors of California and New York and Washington State talk about how they are severely competing for essential personal protective equipment. And so we want to jumpstart this production immediately. The only way to do it is to have the President of the United States take this action. And, we're going to issue this in the House of Representatives here soon. We have a number of co-sponsors, members of Congress are all excited about jumping onto this piece of legislation because, quite frankly, they're hearing the same thing in their communities. We are not prepared as of today. We've already started late to the game on testing, and we have our relatives, our friends, our neighbors are going to work while we're all quarantined at home. They're at work and they're worried, and we're worried for them. And there's no reason why we can't ramp up this production rather immediately. Again, 500 million N95 respirator masks, 200,000 ventilators, 20 million face shields, 500 million pairs of gloves, 20 million surgical gowns, and any other medical material deemed necessary. So we've got to get on the stick, and we're going to try to use this legislation to produce this kind of material that we need. Again, the president has already implementing the Defense Production Act by law, but he's not doing anything with it. And this legislation would compel him to meet these numbers at the very least. So happy to take any questions.
You're able to unmute yourselves. So anybody who has a question, unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Okay, I think I just figured it out. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, what's going on, Tim? Hey, guys.
Hey.
So I guess the only question really would be, you said the president is mandated by law, but hasn't really done much with it. So you're saying this essentially speeds up that process. You're like how is this different than what he would already be doing?
Well, he's activated the Defense Production Act, which gives him the authority and the power legally to be able to come in and really organize the economy around the kind of products that we need, around giving out contracts, and kind of centralizes it around the presidency. And obviously he would have somebody working directly with him to help organize this, but he's not used the authority at all. And you're hearing from both sides of the aisle. This is not a Democratic thing. You're hearing from both sides of the aisle that the president needs to use this power, use this authority to get these frontline healthcare workers the equipment that they need. I mean, these are our family members who are, on the front line. So there's no excuse. Why wouldn't we marshal the entire power of the federal government and the supply chain and the corporations that can help do this to immediately start cranking out this product? I mean, again, if Roosevelt can get us, to build thousands and thousands of planes, 10 times the amount we had at the time during World War II, we certainly could do masks and gowns and other equipment that we need. So this is about compelling the president to act and to get moving on this.
All right. And when you think of a timeline, I know there's a little process, but you said you're taking it to the House kind of ASAP.
Yeah, there's a Senate bill. I think the Senate bill dropped yesterday. Ours is going to drop today or tomorrow. We're already getting calls for co-sponsors. It's funny because I'm getting text messages from other members of Congress saying, hey, put me on your bill. And at the same time, I'm getting text messages and calls from friends of mine who are working in these hospitals, whose spouses are working in these hospitals, and they're scared to death about the testing and not having the equipment that they are going to need. So it's time for us to act. I hope that, if this maybe can pass the House, but, there is bipartisan support. There have been Republican senators who have agreed with my approach here, and we hope we can just get the president on board to do this. Hopefully we don't need to do this if he gets moving. Again, Republicans and Democrats want him to do it. So, we're not sure what the holdup is.
Hi, Tim. This is Karen. Thanks so much for doing this. That was a concern we had when we heard that, the president might lift the, stay at home. And here in Ohio, we're trying to stay at home. But if we don't have a national effort, we're going to get still overrun. So thanks for doing this. Question. Is there any time frame associated with when they need to produce those? Like what a schedule related to that? And the second question is, what about price controls? We're hearing, gouging and things like that.
Yeah, both in the state and under this bill, and the president will have the authority to make sure that's not happening, because the president under the Defense Production Act will have a lot of control over what we're paying for the product and what the product's being sold for. And he and his administration will have a good deal of say over the costs for all of this. And so that's not a concern. We do want to make sure nobody's gouging and people aren't ripping people off in the middle of a global pandemic and national emergency here. So there are those provisions in there. Again, you need to centralize this production at some point.
Right. Yeah.
So we're out here, we're trying to figure out who can 3D print what and who can sew a gown and who,
right.
How do we do this? How do we get the material? But if it's not happening at the national level, then it's not happening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for my questions.
Hi, Congressman. It's Jess Harden from Mahoning Matters.
Hey, Jess.
I am curious as to what the process is for designating certain companies to participate in this, and if you have, anyone in mind, and what that looks like.
Well, the president would be able to say, hey, 3M, we need you. We need an increase in production of masks, and we need X amount in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And 3M will say, well, we can't get the material. And then president, will then find out where to get the material and then work with that company. And then you just keep hammering away at it, but everybody is moving quickly because it's the power of the federal government behind the initiative. And so that's basically how it would work. And I mean, when you look at an area like Northeast Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, you look at what we've done around 3D printing. This is one of the initiatives we're really trying to push out, is how do we activate all of the 3D printing manufacturers across the country to be able to print out these goggles and the masks, and how do we get it certified? And right now we're working with the FDA and we're working with America Makes, because we believe that, and this should have been done 2 months ago, let's make no mistake about it, but the fact that we can maybe ramp up production around 3D printing and literally start printing these masks for our first responders and our healthcare workforce, that's something that could happen rather quickly. We have other manufacturers around town that could very easily slip over to produce make a mold to produce goggles or produce the masks or the component part to the masks or the component part to the ventilators. Like, this is the industrial machine that needs to be activated. And I think we understand that around this community and around Northeast Ohio and Western PA and the industrial Midwest, that we can do this. Just asking the president to flip the switch, activate the American supply chain, and let's start protecting our frontline first responders and healthcare workforce. And our area would participate gladly. We have a lot of companies that are calling me, but they're also afraid that they don't necessarily have the okay from the FDA or from people who understand infectious diseases and all of the rest. And so they're hesitant to do anything because they're afraid they may get sued at some point. And so what we're thinking is if the president activates these companies and gives them a certain level of immunity, because the FDA is signing off and the agencies are signing off, and it's like, look, some mask is better than no mask, and we've got to move down that direction. But again, we need the president to flip the switch, and he's going to have Republican and Democratic support, and that's what we want to show him, that we're here to support that.
And since you have bipartisan support, is there any sort of oppositional argument to this particular legislation? It sounds like people are pretty unanimous about it, but is there anything other folks are saying?
Yeah, we've not heard anything negative about this. These are basic numbers that we are getting. These are bare minimum numbers for the amounts we would need for generally for a year, but in the coming months, and to have Republican and Democrat support. Republican senators have commented that the president needs to utilize the Defense Production Act. He's not listened, and so we want to try to compel him to do so. And we think this can save lives. And again, these are our friends and family members who are on the front lines of these hospitals. We're quarantined and they're going to work in very dangerous situations, and we're asking them to go without the proper equipment. It's like telling a firefighter to go put out a fire without any water or mask or gear. And that's where these healthcare workers are, and the frontline first responders are. So it's time to act. The clock is ticking. Every minute, hour, day that goes by puts more and more people's lives in jeopardy. And it's time to activate the industrial machine that won World War II, that created the greatest middle class the world has ever seen. We need it now to be activated for the global pandemic and the public health of the people in the United States.
I haven't seen any questions from the phone lines. So I can unmute everybody if everybody wants to mute themselves, just to kind of open it up to make sure people aren't not understanding. So please mute yourself if you don't want to be heard right now. I'm unmuting everybody.
Technical issues. Hello, this is Sabrina
Hi,
from Cleveland. Can you hear me?
Oops, sorry.
Hi, Sabrina.
Hello. Okay. I couldn't hear some of the beginning of this because of technical difficulties, so maybe you went over this, but I wanted to find out who are some of the people co-sponsoring it. Also, what are businesses' attitudes toward this? Because do they like the idea of having the federal government tell them what to do? And thirdly, what is the process for voting on this? Because aren't you Congress people being kept away from DC to keep you all from getting germs and whatnot? Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. I mean, we have members of Congress who are joining this left and right. Mikey Sherrill, I know, is an original co-sponsor. Connor Lamb's an original co-sponsor. We can send you all the list. I know that Michael and Rachel on my team in DC are organizing that. We have Congressman Schneider from Illinois called me last night, wants to be on. So there's a number of members who think this is the best way to move things forward. Not exactly sure what's happening in DC right now, what the schedule is, if there's going to be remote voting or if we're going to have to go back, or it sounds like the negotiated stimulus package may pass by unanimous consent. Not sure if that's the case or not. Is this something that we can pass with unanimous consent? I'm not sure about that. We haven't heard a whole lot negative from the companies, coincidentally enough. I think a lot of them, at least the ones around here and the businesses around here that have called me directly, are anxious to participate and figure out a way how they can help, in part because they want to help deal with the public health crisis that we're having now, but in part they want to make sure that their friends and relatives have everything that they need too, and that we can get through this. I mean, we're going to get through this one way or the other, and it's the question is going to be, how bad is it going to be, and how many lives are going to be lost, and how many of our healthcare workforce and our first responders are going to contract the virus because they don't have the proper equipment. And so the businesses, from my understanding, is they're ready, willing, and able to be helpful. And again, this is why you've got to pull the country together. It's business, it's the workers, it's the first responders, it's the healthcare workforce. Everybody's got to be, pulling in the same direction here. And I think the businesses, from all the conversations I've had, they put up their hand and say, how can I help? And we just need the president to help organize this and get this ramped up.
Congressman Ryan.
Hi, this is Cheryl Stolberg. Cheryl Stolberg from the New York Times. Hi, I'm sorry, I also came on late, and I apologize if this question has been asked, but following on Sabrina's question, I'm curious, how have you even introduced this bill given the current, situation? And can you just share a little bit more about the hurdles that you and maybe other members are going through in trying to just conduct your daily business and introduce legislation and shape a policy response when Congress is at home and there's no news in sight about when you're coming back?
Well, it's very frustrating. And I think, like a lot of people who are in their homes right now, I mean, part of it is a very high level of frustration. And part of it is like, wow, we really get to hang out and spend some time together. But when you're in a position where you're trying to expedite a production, for example, for some of these products, it is frustrating that you can't do it in the traditional way. Now, I think bills are still being able to be filed. The House will open and we'll be able to get this filed. The question is going to be, how do we get something like this passed? Again, the rumor is that there'll be a unanimous consent vote on the stimulus bill. Now, can we do that on other things like this potentially? That would be my hope. There are many conversations and letters being written around voting from home. in doing remote voting and how to do that in an appropriate and secure way. So those conversations are ongoing, but utilizing this bill, compelling the president, hopefully will get the president's attention and get the other Republicans who may have the president's ear to say, hey, this is exactly what we need to do. You need to get moving on this. So as you know, sometimes legislation passes and sometimes it nudges things along. And I'm hoping that, you know, we can do a little bit of both. We shouldn't have to do this. I mean, this should not have to be done. This should have been done 2 months ago. We should have been preparing for this all along the way. All the public health people were telling us this. And so, you know, the fact that we have to compel the president now isn't exactly where we want to be, but, you know, it's time for us to step this up. So the logistics in DC, we're working through, but as you know, everybody's pretty frustrated, but, you know, we got to do what we have to do, and not coming together, 435 people on airplanes coming to be in very close proximity, punching the same buttons to vote, breathing the same air for an extended period of time in a chamber like that, interacting with reporters or whatever, that is dangerous, because then they get back on a plane and go back home to their families, and it puts everybody in danger. So we're all struggling to deal with it.
And
Michelle,
Cheryl,
thank you.
Cheryl, real quick, from a functional standpoint, the House is going to go into pro forma either today or tomorrow, we've heard, and so that's when the bill will be officially filed.
Okay, and also again, if you could send a list of co-sponsors.
Yes, and a full release will go out following this press conference.
Michelle Nix from WFMJ TV in Youngstown. Congressman Ryan, are you there?
Hi, Michelle.
Hi. You know, why would President Trump think states competing with the federal government to get some of these PPEs would work? I mean, that's maybe a business strategy, but when you're trying to save lives, why would he think that would work? And also, they're saying that he wants to reopen America sooner rather than later. Do you think that will happen? And is it ill-conceived? I mean, do you think more people will die if that happens?
Well, I don't understand. I mean, I'm trying not to get political here at all, and I'm not. I don't think that's necessarily helpful. I think it's okay to voice our criticisms. I do think that letting the states fend for themselves is insane. And I'll tell you why. Because you think about where this is hitting right now. It's hitting California. It's hitting New York. Some of the biggest states, obviously population-wise, in the country. And they are already gobbling up all, and as they should be, the personal protective equipment. And so when you look at the projections of states like Ohio, that it's 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks down the line, maybe 6 weeks down the line, May 1st or so, they're thinking that the highest levels are going to begin in Ohio. What's going to be left at that point? If New York and California are gobbling everything up and they still can't get what they need, what in the hell is going to be left by the time Ohio hits its peak? And that's why we believe that if the president does this immediately, ramps up the production, that everybody can have the requisite amount of protective equipment that our first responders and healthcare workers need. And I don't think that's too much to ask. So that's why there's so much urgency. I'm just worried that if these big states aren't getting what they need, what's going to happen to Ohio when we need it? And so I'm very concerned about that. I'm also concerned, as you said, of the president talking about opening the country back up in another week or two. I mean, this goes against every ounce of evidence, every opinion of the smartest people in the world who have studied global pandemics. That would completely reverse course and go in another direction than what all the experts are telling us. And from what they're saying is that it will be dramatically worse. And we were just on a call this morning in Summit County where the public health officials were saying how dramatically different things will be if we open things right back up in a week. We will not have done the job. And again, I want to commend Governor Mike DeWine, who has done a phenomenal job here in Ohio. I commend him without hesitation. as someone from another political party. He's done a phenomenal job. He is listening to the public health experts. He's following their recommendations, and he has the courage to do it. And these are very tough decisions that he's making. But we can't have the president go off half-cocked against the entire infectious disease establishment, and all the knowledge and all the history that people have studied their entire lives are telling us this is what we do. And they'll give you examples on going back to, the flu in 1918 as to what St. Louis did and what Philadelphia did, and how St. Louis quarantined, Philadelphia had a parade, and it dramatically changed the outcome of how those communities were hit by it. So I'm really worried, and I'm asking everybody in the public health community to please speak up on what a very, very bad idea that would be.
Tim, this is Karen again. What can we most do? What would be most helpful to you to help get this passed?
I would just, right now we're kind of locked into a social media world. So I think pushing this out, having the public health people, the nurses union, the police and fire unions, really speaking up about this and how needed it is, and that how we would support the president taking this over and making this happen. We're all in this together, and continue to push the senators and other representatives that you may have influence over or have their ear, that this is the direction we want to go in. Let's set these big targets and let's go get it. And let's be Americans. Let's use all the ingenuity, the production, the industrial capacity that we have, the 3D printing, the advanced manufacturing, all of this stuff we have. Let's utilize it for a very urgent and immediate need.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions?
All righty. So Michael, you'll get them all the co-sponsorship and all the stuff we just talked about.
Yeah, release will go out probably in the next 15 minutes or so. And then shortly after that, I'll get the video out to everybody. If you need it, please email me. I'm going to try to get everybody here, but I don't want to miss anybody. So please email me at Michael, MICHAEL .zetts, ZETTS @mail.house.gov. That's Michael.ZETTS @mail.house.gov. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Congressman.
you. Thank you.